Hi, my name is Blake Hunter, Matthew B. Hunter. This is Module 3 project for landscape plant establishment. The topics we'll be going over in this course are irrigation systems, physiological and morphological factors affecting plant use of water and plant selection, and also introductory to water. We're up here at the greenhouses here, and I'm just going to show you guys 3 irrigation systems that were used up here. There's some micro irrigation of drip tubes that are used in these pots that is very convenient and works very well. We have the conventional overhead use when the plants are small, just kind of put over the top like that, but of course that's when the plants are small and we like to get off of that method once they get larger. And then we also have a very convenient sub-irrigation tables that are here that actually flood the table with about 2 inches of water, and the plants sit and soak in there for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then it automatically drains back into these black 100-gallon tubs. And we'll fill these tubs with fertilizer water, and also then we'll leach every few weeks with plain water if we can. Since these sub-irrigation tables don't leach very well when they're put with fert, since the water is recycled, the fertilizer rate gets cut in half on these tables here. That way we don't get high salt content if it doesn't get leached very quick, because since the plant is just sitting in this water here, it's not leaching anything out. The plant is just absorbing it up into its root system, using what it needs, and then it stops. So the drip irrigation system is very convenient because it allows for convenient use of water without hand watering. It's quick. It also can leach as well. Can't really use these right off the bat because when the plant is first potted up in its oasis cube, it is only rooted in that oasis cube, and it's not rooted into the soil around it. So you can't use these tubes, and you have to actually hand water these from the beginning. Same thing with this irrigation table. It will flood the water around it, and if it's not getting sufficient water to the cube where the roots are from the beginning, the plant won't get any water at all. When getting hand water with fertilizer and on the sub-irrigation tables, high salt content is a very key factor that can affect plant water uptake and nutrient uptake, because the high salts in there inhibit the uptake of these nutrients and water, and until you get plain water pushed through and push all these salts out of the system, then will the plant start to lose its high salt contents and be able to take up its nutrients. What we have here is a poinsettia pulled out of its pot, and we're trying to see the different factors of showing when a plant is established. This plant possibly could have been a poor cutting from the get-go because it doesn't have too many roots on the outside here. It has some. The plant's nice and healthy at all, but it's not as much of a root system as some of the plants are. And you can really tell when a plant is established whenever it's got roots to the outside and it's out of its cube. The top here is very hard to see, and it gets to the outside root, and then you start getting shoot growth, and then the root growth along with it. They're kind of inversely related, so you know, if it doesn't have root systems out into the soil, it's only going to grow so much of the shoot growth until it's inhibited by the size of its root system. What we're looking at now is a tree that was planted not too long ago out here in the landscape, elm tree, and I've got it staked up, and you can tell that it's planted from a container pot because the shape of the hole and the size of it, and they didn't look like they made the hole extremely big enough for it, any extra room for the soil compaction here. And I know machinery has been all over this place because they just leveled a building here, so this might be a little tight here, and they could have brought the hole out a lot farther. And this is in a container, and it doesn't look like they shaved any of the root ball off here, cut it back any to maybe promote some root growth and let some lateral root growth happen out and get into this new soil here, instead of it being confined in its own root ball for extended period of time. And you know, it's keeping it from utilizing this outside potential moisture that's in this new fresh soil, and only stuck in its higher organic matter here that's going to decompose very quickly anyways, and this tree could potentially be blown over, anything like that, because it gets real light in its own container because it's not fresh soil. The staking system looks okay. They could have put it on a tripod to kind of take it from all different angles, um, but it's not tied around here at all, and hopefully going to come back after a little while, potentially in about 4 or 5 months when this tree is maybe going to be established, and take those off. Doesn't look like any irrigation is on this right now at all, so hopefully they're coming by and hand watering this. The tree is about 2 inches, so probably about 2 gallons per inch, so about 4 gallons to stay on this tree every day. And then once it gets established, and then back down to about every other day, and then every week or so after that. So we got another elm tree as well planted there, so hopefully they're keeping that plenty of irrigation on these trees and they won't suffer because of it. Establishment of these trees as well can also be determined by when they take the stakes off, how much roots have gotten into the new soil and how strong it is and how stable it's kind of gotten on its own. And also potentially in the next few months when it gets to be spring, if these trees happen to have some shoot elongation and some putting on some green leaves. I'm not sure if that's going to happen too much after, because they were planted this time of year, so they might have to go a full growing season before they get through a full growing season before they really start to show any shoot development. But when they can take these stakes off in about 4 or 5 months, maybe some root growth will be happening in the soil here, and they'll be strong. We're up here at another site here. It's a fresh landscape that was planted. Planted some Savannah hollies, and they've got way too much mulch. Mulch can be good for some water retention, but you get too much on here like that, roots can start to grow up into it and come and potentially make the tree fall over later in life. It's planted way too deep, so that's going to have the roots the roots are in low oxygen soil, so they're going to want to rise up to get some more air, and that'll kind of eliminate water uptake to a certain degree when the roots are down in low oxygenated soil. So they needed to pull the mulch up, pull this tree up a little bit out of the ground, and probably take at least 3 to 4 inches of mulch off of this site here. Same thing with these smaller hollies that were planted along this row here. So these are some improper techniques that were used, and it's going to eliminate the deficiencies of water uptake and the structure of the tree. We're out here at an apartment complex, and what we're looking at here is a very large live oak that was planted in a horrible spot. As you can see, it's only got a foot on each side, some massive roots going on here, and you can see it's adapted well to its environment, but there's no irrigation at all, and these roots have just had to run horizontally along here and possibly up underneath the asphalt, which is probably bad aeration for soil and oxygen levels and things like that. So I'm sure later on in this life, even though live oaks are very well adapted to really harsh areas, that water uptakes might be an issue here later on in life, and especially since there's no irrigation attached to these at all. So this is kind of just a wrong plant selection and how trees adapt to their environments, but then again, they can only adapt so much until water needs just exceed the limitations. What we have here is an example of a perfect example of a mixed landscape. We've got everything running from grasses to loropetalum to large crepe myrtles sitting here, and oh, by the way, that, and it's a perfect example of different irrigation systems that could potentially work better in these situations, but because it's a universal system they've got going on with these sprinkler heads here, and they have some mixed in between, but it's all overhead irrigation, and it's not very efficient either way because it gets all up on the sidewalk and everything as well. But they could potentially run different zones or use bubblers around these trees for specific water requirements, along with the grasses, because I know that they require different water requirements. So it's just a system that they could change out. But yes, not always a perfect real road case. So they kind of have to do with what they've got. And over this is all low maintenance material, so water requirements probably aren't as much, especially with these crepe myrtles that don't need a lot of water anyway. So they probably work well in this situation, and everything's thriving very nice. So it seems like it's all looking nice. One thing we got going on here is looks like a bunch of oleander that has died out and some of this ground cover that's died out around all the oleander. One potential cause is maybe the continuous overhead irrigation right there on all this stuff that maybe just kept everything wet and wasn't a good use for this type of plant at all, and it stayed wet. Maybe some fungus or disease got into it. Um, Probably caterpillars are the main culprit of this dieback and things like that, but it's just gonna be just a factor that can be taken into play with maybe using some micro irrigation running along these shrub bushes and down into that shrub down there, and eliminating the overhead irrigation on these shrubs and just keeping it on the ground cover and the grasses. Also, we see here on the other side of the street are a bunch of hollies that were planted in a row. They all look absolutely hideous. They're planted in about 3 feet of grassy area along the sidewalk in between the curb, and they look like they've been there for a while, but obviously they haven't really put on any new growth or anything like that to really promote great establishment in that area. Planted them right underneath that big shoemart oak down there, so obviously it's not going to grow underneath that at all. So it's just the confined space and those roots having to compete with each other, along with compete with obstacles in the way, and that's just going to make it even harder for uptake of nutrients and water.